channel for another video. That sounded weird. Video! Today, this is the third video I'm recording this morning, so my voice is actually kind of going. But I wanted to get this filmed for you, and this may be the last video that I actually film in my current home, so that's kind of exciting. But anyway, today we are talking about the Tarot of Vampires by Charles Harrington and Craig Maher. Apologies. This is not the same as the Tarot of Vampires by Ian Daniels. This is a newer deck by Llewellyn. Ironically enough, I have a third vampire deck coming in the mail shortly, Tarot V, which I'm very excited to explore. But none of that's happening in today's video. Today I'm sharing with you a review of this particular deck. I have owned this deck for several months now, have been using it in a variety of settings quite frequently, and it took me by surprise. And many of you on Instagram have seen me using this deck. I used it in my Tarot 101 course. I'm using it in my 78 day deck study, the Drop 'em 78 challenge, which you'll seeing over on Instagram and on the community tab here as well. So you've seen this pop up a lot, and a lot of you have requested a review of this deck, so I am happy to oblige. If you're new to this channel and to my reviews, I usually do pretty in-depth reviews. We're going to take a look at the cards and talk about my experience, but we're also going to explore the story behind the deck. We're going to explore the guidebook. I'm going to do a sample reading with the deck. I'm going to talk about, again, my experience with the deck. It's very chatty, very in-depth. So if you're just curious about, quality of cardstock and what the images look like, you can skip around or feel free to find another video. That's cool too. A little bit about this deck. So I purchased this when it first came out. It was this summer. I was quite hesitant to get it, to be honest, because I have the Tarot of Vampires by Ian Daniels. I've had it for several years now. And it's a very special deck, and I was afraid that this deck would just fail in comparison, but this deck actually is quite unique and quite interesting and holds its own in a different category. So I didn't find it was redundant or too shallow, which is, always a bonus. This is the box that it comes in. Let me move my candle here. We like the aesthetics, but these are big decks. So this is a box set by Llewellyn. This is the box that it comes in. I'm not a huge fan of the front image, but I love the inside cover. Beautifully done, if you care about the box at all. It's like the size of a giant book, so not the most economical for storage. The book is definitely not as large as it could be, but it's okay. These are the cards. I'm going to put the deck back in order, and then we're going to flip through the cards while I read the guidebook introduction to you, because I think it's important to talk about that, understand kind of the intention behind the deck, all that fun stuff, and then we'll get into more of my thoughts and experience with the deck as a reader, and then we'll do like a little sample reading. Come away with me in the night. You've always known there was a secret world existing alongside our own. You've seen glimpses of it in the shadows, heard its whispers in the night air, and felt the call deep within your soul. The sun sets on the world of mortals, awakened to the night of the vampire. Within this deck, the living and undead lead an eternal dance suspended between heaven and hell. The tale of the vampire, as told in these cards, is of powerful beings struggling to do what is right in a world that can be dark and terrifying. This is your tale as well, and, just like the children of the night, Many wonders exist within you that will be discovered when you can see yourself for all that you are. Forgotten treasures can be found within the shadowy places, so shuffle the cards and uncover what has been lost. In darkness and in light you shall see and be seen. Chapter 1. In the Shadow of the Vampire. Vampires have been one of our most important cultural shadows for more than a century. Their mysterious origins come in part from the Romanian Strigoi, the spirits of the unquiet dead who rise from the grave to menace the living. In the hands of writers and artists, their nightly hunts and unending lives have been an evocative metaphor to explore all of our darkest fears and most potent desires. In 1897, Bram Stoker's novel Dracula terrified prim and proper British and American audiences with its tale of a foreign nobleman who brings his old world mysticism into England. The Count takes up residence in an abandoned abbey with boxes of tainted soil and preys upon virtuous young women, turning them into monsters. Not very subtle, is it? Each generation has chosen to create and evolve its own vampires to play out their new forbidden fantasies in poems, novels, films, television series, and comics. In these stories, the monsters and their powers have been used to explore such taboo subjects as female sexuality, queer sexuality, gender nonconformity, drug use, teenage rebellion, religion, mental illness, and always without question, our fears concerning death and mortality. As you can imagine, this has made vampires a compelling archetype for anyone who's felt as though they were on the outside. In the last century, something new arose in vampire fiction: the vampire as tormented hero. Examples of this new archetype include Lewis from the Vampire Chronicles, Barnabas Collins from Dark Shadows, Angel and Spike from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Bill and Jessica from True Blood, Edward and his family from Twilight, Stefan, Damien, and Elena from the Vampire Diaries, and many more. Pagan author and journalist Margaret Adler made an extensive study of vampire fiction and identified these characters as moral vampires, powerful creatures with incredible abilities struggling desperately to do what's right. That description holds up a dark mirror to modern human beings. We are aware that we have vast wealth and wondrous technology paid for by draining the planet's resources and oppressing lower-income populaces. We are also aware that despite our many advancements in the sciences, we are going to age and die. Vampire fiction allows us to delve into these dark places, to imagine what it would be like to be young and beautiful forever, and asks us how we would cope with accepting that gift if it required us to drain the vitality from others. You've thought about it, haven't you? What would your decision be? Would you accept a life of eternal night? And if you did, what would you do with the abilities you were given? What shadows stir within you just below the surface, longing to be freed? The unlife of the vampire is much more than shadows and taboos. There's also astounding beauty, joy, and even heroism to be found among its kind, and you will find those things present in this deck. The Tarot of Vampires depicts the nightly struggle of humans and vampires to make sense of their own existence, face their fears, and find their dreams. It has been said that vampires are the most appealing monsters to humans. Unlike other creatures of the night, they tend to be quite attractive. They are impervious to most forms of danger, and they don't have to worry about a day job. Most importantly, they have the preternatural skills to achieve their ambitions and eternity to enjoy them. A tarot reading begins with a question, and a question hints at an unfulfilled desire. A tarot reading can help you size up your prey and suggest a winning strategy that will allow you to move in for the kill. A vampire must also learn to live and move among normal human beings. If they are found out, hunters and torch-bearing mobs are not far behind. And in quite a bit of modern vampire fiction, they are ruled by intricate and often territorial shadow governments. The tarot has much to say about the complex relationships and social structures we find ourselves in and how to navigate them with a minimum of conflict, or how to come out on top when conflict arises. And vampires are extra. They are essentially like us, but with the addition of fangs, secret powers, and a killer wardrobe. Identifying with them and their stories in a reading gives us permission to be extra as well. The tarot, most significantly of all, can show us how to perform the most seemingly impossible feat imaginable to change ourselves. These 78 cards have been a tool of personal transformation for more than 2 centuries. And like the abilities that vampire bloodlines pass through the centuries, they have come down to you. Seek out that which you desire. I hope you enjoyed that little reading from the guidebook there. I always like hearing the kind of thoughts behind a deck, so let me know what you thought, and I might do that again in the future for some other reviews. Please note if everything looks different. The rest of this video was entirely out of focus, and I didn't realize until I went to edit it. So take 2 for me. Hopefully I don't repeat myself too much, but let's get into my thoughts about the deck, what I've used the deck for thus far, etc., etc. So this deck is, let's be honest, it's a Rider-Waite-Smith clone, right? The imagery is very much RWS. It's iconic, easily recognizable. But we do have, you know, several changes that are kind of specific and in line with the story. And as you heard from the guidebook, it has a very intentional, you know, storyline behind it. And that storyline does carry throughout the card descriptions, which we will look at in a moment. But I find that I get a very interesting read with this deck because of that intentionality. It's this odd feeling of being just like an everyday deck because of the RWS clone nature of it. However, if you are paying attention, that undercurrent of that, you know, vampiric shadowy theme is quite strong. It is quite playful. The imagery is quite playful. When we, you know, look at the book, it's very luscious with all of the glossy pages, and you really feel like you're being drawn into some sort of movie or TV series, which I think was really the intention behind this deck. So sometimes it does read as a little bit disconnected. So I don't find that this is something that I'm going to do like deep spiritual work. But for a deck of like general everyday use, it does have a layer of depth that I was not expecting. I have used this deck for regular everyday draw readings. I have used it for demonstrations readings in my Tarot 101 class earlier this year. I am currently using it in the Drop 'em 78 challenge as my calibration deck, which means basically, in case I haven't talked about this yet, or you don't know what I'm talking about, I am studying a specific deck, the Nameless One by Zia Hunt, 1 card at a time, starting October 15th to the end of December in a very specific order as set out by the challenge creator, Mindful Tarot, Esther over there. So every day you study a different card, and sometimes the opportunity comes up to pull an additional card to help clarify the card or just add an extra layer of meaning about what that particular card is really saying. And using this deck for that, I get surprisingly deep answers sometimes. Sometimes it's like an obvious answer, but other times it will give me a card where I'm like, that totally makes sense, and I didn't expect that, you know? So that's been really fun. I think that this is a great all-around reader. As you can see, it shuffles really well for me. I have small hands. My hands are very sore right now from all kinds of work that I've been doing with them, getting our house ready. And even with that, I can still shuffle this deck very easily. It's typical Llewellyn thin glossy cardstock, which I personally prefer. That's, you know, your own personal preference. So those are kind of my overall thoughts on the deck. I've used it so far. let's go into the guidebook real quick. So obviously we read the introduction to the guidebook. You don't get a ton of information in the beginning, but I do think that the information that is provided is done so quite well. You do get like extra illustrations, which is fun. It's laid out like a book, so it's like chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, which is fun. You have a mercifully brief history of the tarot, which I appreciate. It talks a little bit about shadow work and how the deck is set up, sinking your teeth into a tarot reading, which is very, I mean, you always get kind of that generic reading information. I wouldn't say there's anything in here that's revolutionary, but I do find that it's definitely written from the opinion of the person who wrote the book, which you can tell that they actually read tarot. So there is some of their personal thoughts in there, which I do appreciate. I like that they did that. Talks briefly about a tarot journal and symbols. A ritual to bless your new deck, which I did not do. I do my own ritual, but I'm sure that one was lovely. It does provide some spreads. I do find that it gives you a couple generic, but changed a little. Like, this is your generic 3-card spread with like an additional card. So instead of 3 cards, they give you 4 cards. This horseshoe spread I find is like a shortened version of the Celtic Cross spread. I did, however, appreciate these 2 spreads. I've done both of them. They're both a crossroads spread, which is like choosing between one thing and another, and then between heaven and hell, which was a really fun 3-card spread, very inventive. And then it goes into the card meanings. Now, I will say that I did find this particular deck set by Llewellyn lackluster, not in the production quality, but in the guidebook itself. Now, it's not fair to compare them all to Tarot of Vampires by Ian Daniels, because that book is literally like a book. But I do have some of their other box sets, like the Dark Wood Tarot, which has a lengthier guidebook as well. I felt that this one, it's under 200 pages, and while expertly written, it's very lackluster. You get sometimes not even a full page for each card. You do get enough that you feel like you have something to go off of. So this first paragraph up here is usually the description of the card imagery, tells you a little bit about the story. Then it will generally go into basic general meanings of the card, and then sometimes it'll wrap it back into the story, which I do find helpful. And then of course there is reversed and shadow meanings of the card. I find that it's a good mix between generic meanings and the author's own interpretation as it applies to this specific card. So again, I'm not saying this is poorly written. However, I do think it could have been meatier. And I greatly dislike the fact that there is no spacing between these paragraphs. That's a personal thing. Drives me nuts. Makes my eyes go crazy. I know that they did it so that everything lined up perfectly with like the image and then the text on the right. But I, as a personal preference, would have rather had extra spaces and extra words and not had the pictures perfectly in line. But it is what it is. Another thing that I did appreciate about this guidebook is at the beginning of each suit, you do get a description of the symbol that they chose to use, or not description, but like an explanation. So for the wands, I was really thrown off by at first because I don't think of vampires and the Egyptian context as the same thing. Like, it just didn't mix when I saw the Ankh, and I was like, okay, did you just throw that in there because it's trendy? But they actually wove it in really well, and it made a lot of sense. Obviously, the Ankh is the symbol for life in the Egyptian mythology. And then here it says, more than anything else, the vampires of this deck hold sacred the potent vitality found in their blood. The wands are depicted as ankhs, the ancient Egyptian symbol for life. These ankh wands are used principally by mystically inclined vampires known as the blood mages, who can tap into their own vitae to create dazzling effects. So it really kind of wrapped together the idea of the ankh being the symbol for life, but then as we see here in the Ace of Wands, the blood being their life, even though they are undead, right? They need the living blood in order to survive. And it really goes well. The concept marries well with the idea of the wands when we think of, you know, passion and creativity and really that kind of source energy, the pulse and the lifeblood of what makes us, right? Of what makes us alive. So I really appreciated that and found that to be quite cool. It explains this symbol that keeps popping up, which is like their special clan seal. I love that the swords have bat wings. I mean, this is, it's classy, it's sexy, it's storybook-esque, but it's still approachable for beginners. And while there are a few cards in here that really just don't do it for me, I did find there were some fun cards. Ironically, the fives. So let's just go through here. I don't particularly care for this Six of Wands. I don't like most of the wand cards, to be honest, past like the Ace of Wands, because love the Empress, because they, how do I want to say this? They feel very much like they're in Tokyo, which does not match the rest of the vibe of the deck. The rest of the vibe of the deck's very like dark mansion, like, yeah, you do have a skyscraper here, but it's kind of like that dark New York City-esque. You have like the old books. You do have some other cityscapes. I'm just trying to pull out the ones that really throw me off. I love this Five of Swords. Can we just talk about how fucking hot this King of Swords is? Like, yes. I also really enjoy this Eight of Pentacles. I think this is a great depiction for that. Three of Pentacles, love this. Usually I don't like the threes, but this three really does it for me. This Nine of Pentacles is fun. The moon is like everything. You have this like siren and you can see how she's like, not everything is as it seems underneath. I really enjoy that. This Two of Pentacles depiction is interesting because in the book it talks about this character being the vampire who is newly turned and has to decide between his new lover who has turned him and his old family, and if he's going to, you know, try to juggle that or choose one or the other. Very interesting depiction of the Two of Pentacles. I also liked this Six of Cups. Again, another card that I don't usually like, but in this particular card, it's kind of, again, the recently turned vampire reminiscing about what his life used to be like with his family and stuff. So that's interesting. I like this Two of Swords. Love the Ace of Pentacles. Four of Cups is funny. Here we go. Here's some more of these cards. Love this Devil card. Like, I feel like this captures that, like, it captures the feeling of what the devil represents without it being like two people chained up. Like, there's something so sexy and alluring and like addictive that is portrayed in this card, which I think speaks much more to the pull of the idea of the devil rather than, you know, the devil as one would assume in kind of a more religious doctrine. Of course, we have the Tower as like the house being burned because the townspeople found out they were a vampire. Death I love this like death and rebirth aspect within the vampire story. Usually I don't really like kind of that card that highlights too much of the rebirth experience, but I think it's tastefully done here. Ten of Pentacles, we talked about on the box. This Hanged Man is super cool. This Four of Pentacles I also enjoyed. I thought that was a funny... it's supposed to be like the vampire sleeping in the coffin, but he's got all these precautions so he doesn't get disturbed, which I thought was funny. Here in the Strength card, you can see that we have kind of the strength that it takes to subdue the hunger of the vampire, which I thought was a cool take, kind of keeping in line with that. So now let's talk about some cards that I greatly dislike and some cards that I really enjoy. So this Eight of Cups, after reading the guidebook, I understand the idea of this card. You know, we have the woman who was previously very concerned about her appearance. She's supposed to have all these like elixirs and things in front of her, but because she's now a vampire, she can't see her reflections, so like they don't matter, and she has to move into a new way of looking at that. I like the idea of that, but this, I don't know, something about this image just really misses the mark for me. These cards feel like they don't belong in the deck. Like, at all. This Chariot card is... I don't know, it feels like a drag queen on a float. It is a vampire on a float. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it. The Seven of Cups here, which of course talks about different masks, different choices. This woman's choosing what mask to wear to a ball. Why she's going to a ball is not explained. Why the masks are on urns that are in the side of a mountain on the beach is not explained. It's just friggin' weird, and it doesn't make any sense. Seven of Pentacles. I love the idea of this. I love the poisonous plants. I honestly just don't get what's happening with her hair, and it really bothers me. That's like the only thing that bothers me about that card. This vampire floating high above the city. Again, we have this like Tokyo-esque. I don't know if I'm using that correctly, but to me that's just like that like Japanese city feel. I don't know how else to describe that. I'm not well traveled. I'm not well cultured. Please don't be offended. But this is what this makes me think of. And it doesn't feel like it belongs in the deck. And then the Four of Wands. We have like this vampire in a cage at a nightclub, and she's like, for the first time, recognizing that she can sense like everyone's blood. So you can see like all the little like hearts and things. Veins lit up. Again, it just doesn't feel like it belongs in the deck. I don't find that it's a huge deal, but I do find that when I'm doing a draw and a lot of those cards come up in the same spread, it just isn't, it just throws me off. But those are all personal preferences, right? But this is my review, so I'm sharing my review. And then this Five of Cups. I love this Five of Cups. This is a immortal vampire visiting her mortal mother and father who have passed. And she's in that moment of loss, of thinking about the sacrifice where she didn't get to spend much time with them before they died, and how she'll never see them again because she is immortal and they are not. So I thought that was interesting. We have the Page of Cups, which I love that she's like painting in this like fish in the water. It's just a really fun card. I don't know why I set that one down. This Five of Swords I really enjoy. It talks about kind of knowing your opponent, and the vampires fight the werewolf and they weren't prepared and they get burned for it, which I thought was really cool. At first I was like, why do we have a werewolf in there? But it makes total sense. The other one I wanted to show you was the Five of Pentacles. So let me find that. All right, here's the Five of Pentacles. Again, like I said, I feel like they did the conflict cards great justice. Usually they're not like cards that I enjoy in a deck at all, but I really like them in this particular deck. And this Five of Pentacles talks about how, you know, the police are there and this young boy is in trouble, but he has been turned into a vampire, so he actually can't kind of go to the police and get the help that they're supposed to be there for, because he is now like considered an outsider, and would actually do himself more harm than good to like go to them for help, which was such an interesting take on the Five of Pentacles. And I love that they like took it away from that classic church and put it in a different context. I thought that was really cool. Tarot of Vampires. Anyone who's considering working with you, anyone who's feeling called to work with you, whether they be, you know, on the fence for whatever reason, what do they need to know about working with you? What would you like them to know? Okay. So we have the World card, and with her holding the rose and the lily, I feel like this is really the deck trying to say, you know, this is really an entire world, and it's a whole complete experience about the light and the shadow, and it's going to cause you to be reflective on this, and to might bring some things up that either are happy or a little bit bittersweet. And as these things come to light and show themselves to us, there is a invitation to examine, you know, where is our own line? Where is our own moral compass between, you know, that dark and the light? In both, you know, our family structure, our dynamic structure, our idea of the happy life, what we're willing to do to achieve success, and how we present ourselves in the world and interact with others. So I feel like the Tarot of Vampires is really saying, like, yes, I can work with you like a regular tarot deck, but these themes are going to come up, and there is a whole world here to explore, and you may need to be prepared in order to explore these questions with the deck. Not in a confronting way. I don't find that this deck is very confronting, but it is, it does it in a loving way, and it does it in that like playful, intoxicating romance way. So this deck really wants to work with you. It loves to answer day-to-day questions. It loves just to like stay out and be shuffled as kind of like a daily drawer. I wouldn't say that this is like I wouldn't say that this is a deck that's like seasonal. I don't find that this is like a specifically, you know, Halloween deck. This is like meant to be a all-rounder all the time if you like this kind of aesthetic deck. And with us ending here with the Seven of Wands, I would say that this deck also wants you to know, if you're considering working with it, that it's not going to let you shy away from stuff. Like it's going to be loving, it's going to bring it up, but it's immovable. It's not one of those decks where you can be like, I didn't like your answer, let's pick another card. No. It's going to continue talking to you about the same topic because it wants to help you build and nurture a holistic and kind of utopian lifestyle for yourself. It wants to build things with you. And it's not going to let you not examine that. But again, like I said, I find this deck to be very, it's gentle, it's loving, it's playful, but, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. But on the base level, it's like, no, let's really look at this. Let's go deep. Let's go there. So, overall thoughts on this deck. If you're on the fence and you're not looking for a deep dive study deck, then I think this is a good option. If you are new to tarot, but you're looking to explore something with a little more of a storyline, with a little more potency to it, I think this is also a great option. If you're someone who only sees vampire lore as something just for Halloween, this may not be a great investment for you because you may not use it more than, a month, a year. I think this is a fantastic all year long kind of deck. I will continue to use this in a variety of ways. Like I said, I don't think it does well with spiritual kind of readings, but for pretty much everything else, it seems to work great. I enjoy some of the interpretations. I enjoy that they keep to the story. I have some gripes about the guidebook, mostly because of, the choice of length and the formatting and those things, but that doesn't really have to do with the deck. That's just personal preferences. They're also really intentional with the backs. The roses are supposed to represent kind of the vampire life, and the lilies are supposed to represent mortal life, so mortal and immortal life. And that theme is carried through with that imagery in some of the cards as well, which I think is cool. So yeah, I really enjoyed the deck. I hope that you guys enjoyed this review. I look forward to continuing to work with this deck as like a general all-around good everyday use deck. If you have this deck, let me know. If you're looking to try it, let me know. If this review helped you to decide that the deck isn't for you, I'd also love to hear that. And with all that being said, I will see you guys again soon. Take care, guys. Bye.